Back in January 2020, there was a bug where if you swing your wrench and switch to heavy, you would die and go invisible, but still able to attack and kill people. This bug was fixed a week later, but how does swinging a wrench cause so many problems? In TF2, some effects are created through the animation event system. For example, the Scout's double jump animation has an event on frame 1 to spawn the jump particle effect. The Soldier's reload animation has events to hide and unhide the rocket model. The Eyelander taunt has events to play sword swishing noises on frame 45, 55, and 70. When the game plays any animation, there is a accompanying check for its animation events. The game writes down the animation's ID, then incrementally checks a chunk of that ID over time. If it finds an animation event, it plays it. Since the system checking for animation events only cares about the animation's ID, you could hypothetically break the system by starting animation 10 on Scout, then switch to Pyro. The check for animation 10 would simply keep going, even though it's now getting information back about Pyro's ID 10 animation rather than the Scout's. Things could really break if animation event checks for a previous class persisted through class changes. So alongside resetting everything when you switch classes, like deleting any stickies you shot, the game also stops any animation event checks. And here's the problem. It only stops event checks on your computer, but not the server. Animation events are split between being carried out by your computer or the server. Your computer takes care of the aesthetic events, like particles and sound effects. The server does gameplay events, such as limiting your movement for the conga taunt. Another server event is AE Ragdoll. This event is only used once in all of TF2, and it's specified in an unused heavy animation called Die Simple. When activated, AE Ragdoll creates a ragdoll in place of your player model, makes you invisible, non-solid, and incapable of moving. So if a animation happened to have the same ID as the heavy's Die Simple, then you could potentially erroneously trigger AE Ragdoll to activate, since it's a server-side animation event which won't get stopped between class changes. Oh wow, the heavy's Die Simple is ID 62, and the engineer's wrench animation is also ID 62. So when you swing your wrench, the game writes down its animation ID and plans to periodically check in on that ID for the next few seconds. You switch to heavy, and eventually, while checking on ID 62, the game finds AE Ragdoll and creates disaster. This is why using other wrenches would cause the bug, but ducking or gunslinger wouldn't do it. Neither of those use animation 62. In this ghost state, hit scan bullets won't hurt you, even though sentries can target you. Projectiles will go through you, but explosion splash can still damage you and eventually kill. Since this bug is a problem with animations in general, and not specifically the wrench, if another class had the ragdoll event that lined up with something, the bug would happen there too. This bug has also actually been around since the game's release. Both Heavy and Engineer has had animations added to them over time, so in this version, the wrench swing doesn't line up with Die Simple. Instead, it's the pistol reload animation. After the bug got fixed, the Heavy and Engineer's animations weren't changed, which means that AE Ragdoll itself was patched to make sure it wouldn't trigger if it got activated while you were alive. So years later, even if another animation was in danger of triggering AE Ragdoll, we wouldn't have invisible players again.
You can't see them, and that's scary.